Hey, what's up guys? It's Pedro here from newcoder.com, and in this tutorial we are going to be working with strings. So we've already been sort of introduced with strings with our Hello World program, but let's go ahead and dive deeper. Alright, so to get started, when we talked about strings, we said that all you needed to do was use these two double quotations. So we have an opening and closing double quote. And within here, we put some text, and that text is considered a string. So I'm just going to say Bob owns a car, for example. And let's go ahead and save this within a variable. So we'll say some text, and we'll assign it Bob owns a car. Now you can use double quotes, but you could also use single quotes. So if I was to copy this, and we'll say some text too, and instead of these double quotations, we could use a single quote. Now you do have to match, so you can't use a double quote here and then a single quote here. So whatever you choose, whether it's a double quote or single quote, you have to stick to it. So let's go ahead, and since we have these two variables, let's go ahead and print this out. Let's go ahead and save, and let's run this. Okay, so you see that we get the same exact output. So now from here, let's go over some of the got yous of a string. So for example, let's say I don't want to say Bob owns a car, for example. I just want to say Bob's car. So we'll remove owns a, and we'll say Bob's car like so. Now our editor is actually giving us a hint here, but let's go ahead and save this and see what happens when we run it. You can see that we get an invalid syntax. So what's happening here? Well, Python thinks that this single quote and this single quote is a string. And then this, Python gets confused. It has no idea what this is. So what we need is a way to tell Python, hey, I don't mean a single quote as a string. I want the actual single quote. So what I can do is use escape characters. So for example, we could use a backslash like so, then followed by the character you want to escape. In this case, the single quote here. And now Python says, okay, this is the opening, this is the closing, and he actually wants me to output this single quote as text or a string. So now if I save this and execute this, you can see it works perfectly fine. Bob's car. So Python is no longer confused when you use escape characters. But there is also another way you could achieve the same thing. Let's say we take this double quote example and we want to do the same thing. So let's say I want to say Bob's car. So I use a single quote, a S, go ahead and save, and then I could go ahead and execute. And we get the same exact output, no errors. So why can I use this single quote up here and an S with no errors, and I get an error when I try to do it here? It's because Python is able to tell the difference between the double quote here. So we have an opening here, closing here, and then we have a single quote here. So as long as Python's able to tell the difference, you should be good to go. So if we remove this escape character, again, you can see that Python's unable to tell the difference between this and the ending quote. But if we use the double quotations, it's able to say, hey, he means this single quote as text. So he wants this to be a string. So now from here, we could go over another escape character. And before we do that, let's bring in the documentation. So within the Python documentation, you can see here that the escape sequence that we used, or escape character, / single quote, will produce this single quote. So now let's say that I want a new line, for example. So we're going to need to use the / n. So what we're going to do is let's go ahead and demonstrate the problem. So let's say I want Bob's to be on one line and car to be on another line. So if I try to do this, you can see that Python is having a heart attack right now. So if I save this and run it, so the error we get is EOL, which stands for end of line, while scanning string literal. So Python's complaining that you can't have a string start on one line and end on another. So if we can't do that, how can we have Bob's printed on one line and car printed on another line? So what I can do is we could use that escape character, and that's going to produce a new line. So we use \n, go ahead and save, execute this. You can see that we get Bob's car on different lines. So that is pretty much the ins and outs of escape sequences or escape characters. Now there are other ones, so I guess we could give one more example. So let's say we want a tab. So we could use \t for tab. Go ahead and save, execute, and you can see that this is tabbed here. So now from here, let's keep working with strings. So I'm just going to comment this out. So I'm going to hit Control / to comment this out. And let's go over string concatenation. So let us create a couple of variables. So we're going to have a first name, and we're going to call this guy Bob. Next, we'll have a last name, and we'll say that his name is Smith. So let's go ahead and change that. And this person's also going to have an age, for example. So let's say age, and let's say he's 20 years old. I want to print out Bob Smith, for example. So I want to print out the full name. So I could come down here and we'll say print, and we'll do some string concatenation. So we'll pass in first name first, and string concatenation is nothing more than adding two strings or more together. And what I want to do is do a space and use the + and our last name. So we'll say last name. Now this is not going to give us the desired output, but I want to show you a common error that people do. So let's go ahead and save this, and let's go ahead and output this. So you see that we get the output of Bob Smith, so our full name, but our first name and last name are stuck together. So what I can do is we could do more string concatenation. We do a + here, and within here, all we want to do is add a space. So we have our first name, add that to a space, and then add that to our last name. So if I save this, go ahead and execute it, we get Bob Smith with a space. So now let's make this a little bit more complicated. So let's say instead of just outputting the full name, we want to say my name is, and remember, we need to add a space, otherwise this string is going to get stuck with first name. So we add a space here, then we do the +. So we add it to first name or do some string concatenation. So my name is Bob Smith, and let's say we add another string, and we'll add one more space. My age is, add a space again. This time we do a + with age. Now this is going to give us an error, but I want you guys to see this error. So we save this, go ahead and execute it, and you can see can only concatenate string, not of type int, right? So what's happening? We have this giant string here, but age isn't a string. It's a number, it's an int. So what we need to do is convert age to a string in order to do string concatenation. So we could call a built-in function called str, stands for string, and we could pass age to it. Now this is gonna return a string representation of age. So now if I save this and now execute it, you can see that we get my name is Bob Smith, my age is 20. So if you're trying to do some string concatenation, always make sure that the type must be of type string. If it's not, simply pass it to the string function like we did with age, and it will go ahead and convert it to a string for you. So that is string concatenation. So that's pretty much all I wanted to cover within this tutorial, and I'll see you guys in the next one.